My name is Lara, and I never imagined a simple change could stir emotions I wasn't prepared to face. At 34, recently remarried, I'm doing my best to build a peaceful home for my new family. But life has a way of testing even the strongest boundaries. It began the day I met Ella, my stepdaughter. She was 16, with an effortless charm that made her impossible to ignore and a smile that could light up the darkest corner of any room. From the start, I told myself our relationship would be friendly but firmly bounded. I was her stepmother, not the friend she might hope for. Our family dinners were polite at first, quiet, with the occasional awkward laugh. I respected her space, never pushing for more than casual conversation. But as days turned into weeks, I noticed subtle changes in her behavior, longer glances, casual touches that lingered a little too long, smiles that seemed more knowing than innocent. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just a teenager seeking attention, maybe testing the waters of her new blended family. Then, one rainy evening, everything shifted. I was sitting on the living room couch reading when Ella tiptoed past. Without thinking, I offered a warm smile, expecting a quick nod in return. Instead, she paused, leaning against the wall with a mischievous glint in her eyes. "You're really beautiful, you know," she said softly, almost a whisper. I froze, my heart skipping in a way that felt alarmingly like longing. "Thank you, Ella," I managed, forcing a polite smile. I told myself they were just words, a harmless, fleeting compliment. Yet, the way she lingered near me, brushing past my shoulder as she walked away, made a strange flutter settle in my chest. Days passed, and the tension grew. Every shared moment felt charged with something unspoken. She'd ask me to help with her homework, and her hands would brush mine, accidentally, or so she claimed. She'd sit closer than necessary on the couch, laughing at jokes that weren't particularly funny, her eyes locked on mine with a curiosity that made me uneasy. I tried to keep my distance, reminding myself of the boundaries I'd carefully set. But there were moments, brief and fleeting, when I almost forgot them, drawn into the intensity of her presence. One night, I came home from work exhausted, expecting the usual quiet house. Instead, I found Ella in the kitchen, humming softly, waiting for me. "I made something for you," she said, offering a small plate of cookies with a shy smile. "Thank you, sweetheart," I replied, touched by the gesture. Yet as I reached for the plate, our hands brushed. She didn't pull away. She looked at me, her eyes searching for something I wasn't sure I wanted her to see. "I know we're supposed to have boundaries," she said quietly, almost as if reading my mind, "but sometimes I forget, and I hope you don't mind." My pulse raced. I felt a wave of guilt and confusion. I thought the boundaries were clear. I thought we were being careful. And yet here she was, breaking them without shame, her words both innocent and daring. I wanted to pull away, to remind her and myself of the rules. But the pull between us was stronger than reason, a magnetic tension I couldn't ignore. I left the kitchen without another word, heart pounding, hands trembling. I locked myself in my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to make sense of my own thoughts. How had it come to this? How had a relationship meant to be simple and respectful become so charged with unspoken desire and dangerous curiosity? And then, just as I thought I'd steadied myself, I heard the soft click of her bedroom door opening, followed by a voice that sent shivers down my spine. "Lara, can we talk?" I froze, gripping the edge of my bed, my mind racing. The voice was soft, hesitant, yet there was an unmistakable boldness behind it that made my chest tighten. "Ella, my stepdaughter. What could she possibly want to talk about at this hour?" "Ella, it's late," I said carefully, trying to keep my tone steady. "We can talk tomorrow." But she didn't retreat. Instead, I heard the soft shuffle of feet, then a pause just outside my door. A breath, a whisper of hesitation, and then, "Please. Just 5 minutes." My heart thumped against my rib cage. 5 minutes. I wanted to say no. I wanted to remind her of the boundaries we'd once clearly set. Yet there was a pleading in her voice, a vulnerability that stirred something inside me I wasn't ready to face. I sighed and sat up straighter, running a hand through my hair. "Okay. 5 minutes," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. She stepped into the room, her eyes wide, searching mine as if hoping to find reassurance. I don't know how to explain this," she whispered, her words trembling. "I like spending time with you. More than just normal." The words hit me like a cold wind. My chest tightened, and I had to close my eyes for a moment to steady myself. I'd sensed the tension between us, but hearing her confess it so openly, so daringly, made it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. "Ella," I began carefully, reaching for the right words, we have to be careful. There are rules. Lines we can't cross." She took a hesitant step closer, and I noticed how her hand brushed against my arm, not quite accidental, not quite deliberate. "I know," she said softly. "I know. But I can't help how I feel, and I don't want to pretend anymore." My heart ached. I wanted to pull her into a hug, to comfort her. Yet every instinct screamed that some lines could never be crossed. "I care about you more than you know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "but some feelings, they can't be acted on." Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. Instead, she nodded slowly, biting her bottom lip as she wrestled with her emotions. I don't want us to be strangers," she said finally, her voice breaking slightly. "Even if I have to hide how I feel." The tension in the room was unbearable. Electric. My mind spun, trying to balance compassion with caution, longing with responsibility. I'd never imagined my stepdaughter could make me feel so conflicted, so aware of a pull I couldn't fully control. I took a deep breath. "Ella, you are important to me," I said gently, placing a hand over hers, "but I need to protect both of us. We need distance, at least until you understand these feelings yourself." She withdrew her hand slowly, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of hurt and understanding. I can try," she whispered, then paused. "But it's going to be hard. I think I might cross the line again." My heart skipped a beat. That sentence, so innocent and dangerous at once, sent a shiver down my spine. I wanted to stop her from saying more, from admitting what she might try. Yet there was a strange honesty in her words that left me powerless. She turned and walked toward the door, stopping just short of leaving. "Good night, Lara. And thank you for listening." I watched her leave, the door clicking softly behind her, and sank back onto my bed, trembling. I thought I'd set boundaries. I thought I'd kept my emotions in check. But now, with her confession lingering in the air, I realized boundaries were fragile, and some desires were far more complicated than I'd ever imagined. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, knowing tomorrow would bring a new struggle, not just hers, but mine, too. How could I navigate this delicate tension without losing control, without letting her innocence and my own conflicted feelings collide? And then, just as sleep seemed impossible, a memory flashed through my mind, a moment from the afternoon when she'd laughed at something I said and brushed my arm, accidentally. That simple touch, trivial then, now felt loaded with unspoken intent. I knew with a sinking feeling in my chest that the boundaries I'd trusted were already beginning to crumble. And deep down, I feared that neither of us would ever be the same again. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, but it did little to lighten the heaviness in my heart. Ella was already awake, quietly in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. Her presence should have felt comforting, normal, but after last night, every glance, every movement carried a weight I couldn't ignore. "Good morning, Lara," she said softly, her voice calm. Yet there was something unreadable in her expression. I nodded, forcing a smile, careful not to let my inner turmoil show. "Good morning, Ella. How did you sleep?" "Fine," she replied, and I could sense she was measuring her words, careful not to let anything slip. I wanted to reach out, to reassure her, but the memory of her confession still lingered, reminding me how delicate our situation had become. The day passed in a blur of tension. Every shared glance, every accidental brush of hands felt amplified. I tried to maintain normality, but it was impossible. There was an unspoken electricity between us, an invisible thread that pulled at my heart, even as I reminded myself of my responsibilities. By evening, I found myself in the living room trying to read a book, but my thoughts kept drifting back to her, the soft laughter from her room, the way she'd leaned against the wall yesterday, the gentle way she'd touched my hand. It all replayed in my mind, vivid and unnerving. And then she appeared, standing in the doorway, her eyes fixed on mine. "Lara, can we talk again?" I felt a surge of both dread and longing. "Ella, we talked last night. Perhaps it's better to give this some space." She shook her head gently, taking a careful step closer. "No. I need to say this. I can't just ignore it. The way I feel, and I can't pretend it's not real." My chest tightened. There it was again, the confession that made my heart ache and my mind scream caution. I wanted to protect her, to shield her from feelings she was too young to fully understand. And yet, I also couldn't deny the strange connection I felt with her, the pull that went far beyond a normal stepmother-stepdaughter relationship. I took a deep breath, grounding myself. Ella, emotions are complicated. What you feel, it's real, yes. But acting on it, it could hurt both of us. We must be careful. Her eyes glimmered with unshed tears, yet there was a determination there I couldn't ignore. I know, Lara. I know it's wrong in some ways. But I can't stop thinking about you, even if I try. And I don't want to hide it anymore. A silence settled between us, heavy and electric. My mind raced, trying to reconcile my feelings with my responsibility. I could feel my own heart responding against reason, against all the rules I'd promised to uphold. Finally, I spoke, my voice soft but resolute. Ella, we can't cross that line. But we can be honest about our feelings. Careful, thoughtful honesty. We can learn how to live with them without letting them destroy what we have as a family. She nodded slowly, a bittersweet smile on her lips. I think I can try. But I don't know if I'll ever stop feeling this way. I felt a mix of relief and despair. Relief because we hadn't acted on impulses that could shatter our lives. Despair because the longing between us was undeniable, and some part of me knew it would remain, quietly, in the shadows of our hearts. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something profound: boundaries could be broken, emotions could overwhelm reason. And yet, love of every kind was complicated, messy, and impossible to fully control. And as I drifted into a restless sleep, I understood that while our boundaries had been tested, what mattered most was the respect and care we chose to maintain, even when desire whispered otherwise. Because some connections were too strong to ignore, and some feelings, no matter how forbidden, could shape the course of our hearts forever. And in the quiet of our home, with secrets unspoken but deeply felt, I knew one thing with certainty: life had changed between us, and there was no going back.